to pounce.
First take. What
Yeah,
we've had a couple weeks off here, but we're getting right back to
maybe,
it.
maybe not. But now we're
Yeah,
back in the swing of things.
back in the swing with old Ada Limón this week, our current
Ada
U.S.
Limon.
Poet Laureate.
She is. She's a very decorated poet, great poet. Um, a lot of people they've lauded praises on her poetry. They've described it as, almost like a breath of fresh air.
Mm, mm. She's not quite a nature poet, but close to
A
it.
lot of a lot of it seemed like a lot of her poetry was dealing with sort of the outdoors,
Nature oriented, definitely
animals.
outward
It felt
looking.
like a
A
lot
lot
of
of animals,
animals.
a lot of animals, plants too.
Hmm.
Absolutely. She definitely is one to me that comes through like almost like the Mary Oliver like lineage, I feel like, in a way.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And what do you kind of mean? Like,
Being focused on outdoors, on
mm,
animals,
okay, okay, just
being yeah, almost kind of like this Zen sort of quality, kind of like Buddhist sort of uh
mm,
kind of perspective,
there's
sort
sort
of
of a
meditative.
there's sort of a transcendent of the self aspect in some
Hmm.
of her poetry.
Absolutely. Yep.
She does seem
Yep.
to transcend herself.
Yep.
I think this is a poet that kind of had to kick back against maybe being shoehorned as, like, a Hispanic poet, just a
Hmm.
Hispanic poet. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
maybe there were people that might have tried to pigeonhole Ada Limon in that sense. I think I've read interviews with her where she was sort of pushing back on the idea of, like, being a Hispanic poet, or even, I
Hmm.
think, even a woman poet, even a female
Hmm.
poet.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think a bit, because there are some of those kind of things, like her being like the first U.S. Poet Laureate of like Mexican heritage, like there's like, people, from the outside looking in, it does on some way, it seems like a lot of it is like sort of like identity when they're talking about her, like, oh, it's a female, oh, she has Mexican heritage, oh,
Hmm.
whatever. But in reading her work and also, listening to her on some podcasts, she that's it sometimes unfortunately I feel like some of that stuff like I feel like art and poetry, like art in general, should be like a sacred place, right? Where,
Mm.
it doesn't matter who it is. We want the best. Like, I want to, I'm trying to read some poetry here. Like, I want to like read good poetry. I want to read the best poetry possible. Like, I don't care who it's from to a degree, you know? And so, um, once you kind of read and learn more about her, you realize like a lot of that I think is just outside noise.
Mm. I think so too. I mean, at first I might have been a bit unsure of her poetry as I was reading it, but I was able to find several pieces that I did enjoy, and Ada Limon's definitely a solid poet and
Hmm.
worth
Hmm.
checking out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of felt a little kind of way when was first seeing her. I was like looking up like U.S. Poet Laureates is how I kind of discovered her, and because I didn't wasn't familiar with her, and I was kind of like, okay, I wonder how this is gonna be, just because some of that kind of you know, identity stuff is really kind of invaded, the arts and like academia and, all, institutions as a whole. So sometimes it's kind of like, all right, is this like, is it going to be that good?
Hmm.
Is it poetry? Is it going to be real poetry? Like, I hope so. I hope it's just not, s- something, some baloney, and I could say I'm pleasantly surprised with how good I felt like she actually was. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I mean, I'd be willing to go ahead and dive in.
Yeah, yeah, you want to go ahead? Um, I think,
Yeah.
did I go first last time? Does it matter to you?
No, we can. I can cue yours up. I got yours right here. Gonna do the poem "Sanctuary."
Yes, and I got that in the hurting kind here. So
Hmm. Okay.
this is she actually released this book in 2022. So already um as the poet laureate. And all right, without further ado, Sanctuary by Ada Limon. Suppose it's easy to slip into another's green skin, bury yourself in leaves, and wait for a breaking open, a breaking out. I have, before, been tricked into believing I could be both an eye and the world. The great eye of the world is both gaze and gloss, to be swallowed by being seen, a dream, to be made whole by being not a witness, but witnessed. So, with this one, the reason I chose this poem is because I felt like in many ways this poem kind of represented almost what, to me, reading the hurting kind almost was like about in a way. I felt like it was almost like a commentary um, on sort of almost what I felt like was her mission with with these poems as I was reading them. Um, but to start off, we have like sanctuary, and that like what is it? Sanctuary, maybe like like a safe place, you know, um, maybe even a place of sort of like worship. It has
Hmm.
kind of sort of connotations of like not only like safety and security, but also of almost like a like kind of like heavenly, some like somehow like divine,
Hmm.
place. And in this poem, we also have, as we were kind of talking about, we have elements of nature, and we also have, kind of coming from almost like this sort of Buddhist, sort of Zen perspective in a way. And right off the bat, also another thing, and this is like kind of a popular thing I've seen more and more, just like these three lines stanzas, these
Hmm.
tercets. We've talked about this, um, but suppose it's easy to slip into another's green skin. It's almost like can if you could put yourself into a seed, that's what I'm thinking of, like a little seed in this green skin, bury yourself in leaves and wait for a breaking open, a breaking out, this sort of like suppose, you could just plant yourself here and kind of bloom here as maybe something else other than what you are, you know. Um, I have before been tricked into believing I could be both an eye and the world. Um, this poem's kind of coming from a place, sort of after she's looking back, of course. Um, and maybe I kind of identify with this as well. This, being tricked into believing I could be both an I and the world. Sometimes I feel like the world so many times is like kind of trying to convince us, maybe with social media, maybe with things like Instagram, and we could both be the experiencer and the experienced, uh
Hmm.
where I watched Birdman again, my favorite movie, the other day, and at one point he's apologizing to his ex-wife for I shouldn't have filmed the birth, of their child. I should have just let the moment be. He's like, because I don't have it anymore. I should have just been there with you two. Um, like we think we can oh, I go to the Grand Canyon, let me take the photo. What's my memory of? My photo, not the Grand Canyon. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, and so, this is, I have before been tricked into believing I could be both an I and the world. That's also the tangible, the intangible, the material, the immaterial, Father Time, Mother Earth. We're looking at, what does God say that he is, in the Old Testament, with Moses. I am, the I am, um he is the great I am, that quality of being, you know, and then, the world. Um, so, the great I again, it's almost kind of invoking this, like this is like, the great I, thinking the great eye of Sauron, in the Lord of the Rings, the great
Right.
eye that the Wicked Witch of the West uses in The Wizard of Oz. Um, the great eye of the world is both gaze and gloss. Gaze, like almost I'm thinking like intently looking, and then also gloss, like glossy eyed,
Hmm.
when so like can you even see, like both attention and inattention. The great eye of the world is both gaze and gloss, to be swallowed by being seen, almost like being consumed. Maybe is that all we're here to do is to be consumed? Maybe even when we're artists and we put things out, all we want to do is be consumed. A dream, to be made whole by being not a witness, but witnessed. Maybe you know, maybe sometimes we have to, just live our lives. We can't be both creator and creation. Maybe the sense of, maybe the only way to like maybe fulfillment or this sense of being whole is to just live and be in the moment instead of trying to also be a witness to everything around you. It reminds me of the MF Doom line, like, and can they testify within the spirit, Uh, you know, no, is the answer. Um,
To me, this poem is like much like a sanctuary. A sanctuary is a place that sort of explores the distinction between like the mundane and the divine. You know, a sanctuary is like a place where that line blurs, and that's sort of what I'm getting a lot here. Like the breaking open, the breaking out, it's almost like a seed coming out of the ground. It almost reminds me of a baby being born, and this is sort of like a like once something is born, it's sort of like in the world, like it has its like like because when the baby's in the womb, it almost is that objective and subjective together. Like the world is the baby is the world. It doesn't really know of a difference, but once that seed sprouts, once the child's born, now it's made starkly aware of the difference uh between itself and the world. And the great eye is, almost like that great eye of omniscience, the great eye of God himself. God is that objective and subjective. But when we get to the swallowed by being seen, it's almost like, by being seen, by being acknowledged, by being consumed, it's almost like we're completed. It's almost like how a sacrifice can sort of save the world or redeem the world. It's sort of an idea like that. Because you have because
yeah.
like the because they it's almost the true height of life would be giving yourself over to your lover. You know that is seen as like the height of life. So to be swallowed by being seen, a dream, because to be made whole by being not a witness but witnessed. We are made whole by being seen, by being almost understood, consumed, by giving ourselves over. We are made whole. It's kind of Tao
Mhm.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It is
Right.
because
Yeah.
it is a dream. It is almost like oxymoronic.
Mhm.
giving the more we give of ourselves, the more of ourselves we almost have.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that, kind of the playing, between, sort of those sort of, sort of oxymorons, or, like that's kind of something that, and I know that Ada Limon does like practices meditation, and, thinks about these things, but, that's where kind of like Buddhism and meditation can kind of play to, the art of the poet, by,
Mm,
kind of seeing, attempting to see things more for what they are, than, just like kind of trying to like take away layers, and kind of playing with these sort of, um, ironies a little bit. And I think that
well,
this
the
this
I
poem
think
does that. Yeah.
I think the reason why Buddhism always lends itself to art is because they're both sort of transcending the self.
Hmm.
Art
Hmm.
the
Right.
the artist attempts to sort of transcend themselves just as much, just as the Buddhist. I'm not saying that, and don't get me wrong, if we sort of break it down to the level of attachments and these sorts of things, then obviously, like, artists have fared worse than, maybe like Buddhist monks in the long run. But that's sort of the overlap, because I imagine, maybe just, being an artist myself, or you know through reading this poetry, that when the poet says to be swallowed by being seen, to be made whole by being not a witness but witnessed, I imagine it's their poetry that is being witnessed. um Either that or some sort of intrinsic quality within themselves. But even if that is sort of appreciated by a lover, or maybe children or family members, that is still sort of like seen as like a consumption. Like, I'm giving that over to my family, I'm giving this to my lover. They are consuming this, but this is completing me.
Yeah. There's also, with, kind of Buddhism and meditation, kind of developing the witness, and being able to sort of separate yourself from sort of your actions or your thoughts, and sort of just see them, and kind of allow them to kind of pass by. So like you
Mm,
sort of like develop this witness, and you think of like perhaps like, with God being omniscient, you know, and omnipresent, and, um, I'm sort of omnipotent. You have this, uh he's almost like the witness, right? So like then like you kind of being your role is like, I can't both be, God, the great I, the witness, and play the role I'm supposed to play in this. I'm just supposed to be witnessed. uh
mm,
that's something I take from it a little bit.
mm,
um where maybe you gotta just live life, and to be made whole is like to be it's just kind of interesting how like to be understood we feel to be made whole, rather than to try and understand something. Because it's like no matter how much knowledge you try to attain, like you're gonna be unfulfilled. But if you just try to allow yourself to be known, then you'll feel this great sense of fulfillment.
mm,
I don't know. That's it. Is it? But I mean, hey, that's the great thing about poetry and poems like this, is that they make different people think different things, and get you to like have a conversation and think about it. I think then the poem's done the job it's supposed to do.
mm. I think so. I think it's interesting that this is called sanctuary. It's almost like, it reminds me of, like, maybe, like, like, we were talking about the seed in the ground, or the womb, like the child in the womb before birth. These are sort of like liminal spaces. Like, the seed in the ground is sort of between worlds. The child in the womb is sort of like between worlds. And the idea and the themes of this poem are also sort of between the mundane world and the divine.
What's interesting is that sanctuary often is an in between world. because it's between the danger and your final home, you know, your
Mm,
final resting place. Sanctuary isn't where you stay.
right. Yeah. It's almost like a little reprieve.
Hmm.
Mm,
Until you get to where you're going.
yeah. So very
So
very interesting.
yeah, so yeah, that was Sanctuary. And that's from the Hurting Kind.
All right. Going to share my screen now. The poem that I chose was What It Looks Like to Us and the Words We Use by Ada Limon. This poem is it looks like it was in a book of poems, Sharks in the Rivers, Milkweed editions. But kind of a longer poem. But what it looks like to us and the words we use. Gonna be reading this one, and we'll see how it goes. What it looks like to us and the words we use by Ada Limon. All these great barns out here in the outskirts, black creosote boards knee deep in the bluegrass. They look so beautifully abandoned, even in use. You say they look like arks after the seas dried up. I say they look like pirate ships, and I think of that walk in the valley where Jay said, "You don't believe in God?" And I said, "No. I believe in this connection we all have to nature, to each other, to the universe." And she said, "Yeah, God." And how we stood there low beasts among the white oaks, Spanish moss and spider webs, obsidian shards stuck in our pockets, woodpecker flurry, and I refused to call it so. So instead, we looked up at the unruly sky, its clouds and simple animal shapes we could name, though we knew they were really just clouds, disorderly and marvelous and ours. All right, so that was what it looks like to us and the words we use. And what I like about this poem is there's a there's a bit of sort of the kind of the Southern Gothic the tradition in here, because we start with barns. We're on the outskirts already. Again, we're on the outskirts, but this time we're physically on the outskirts, and there's these old barns, and even though there's these old barns, there's they look abandoned, even though some of them might be abandoned, some of them might not be abandoned. And we have people just looking at them, and from one's point of view they look like arcs, after the seas dried up. One person says they look like pirate ships. And basically these barns are abandoned. These are sigils of a past, are of a great tradition that has sort of faded. And maybe other things have faded, like people's beliefs in God, people's rigid beliefs may have also faded. But from our point of view, we still see something, even if like a lot the same not the same amount of people believe in God, or maybe they don't believe in strongly, or maybe they have other terms to describe it, like a connection we all have to nature, to each other, to the universe. Really, a lot of these things are just, it's almost like we're coming at them from different points of view, you know, because the retort to, not, I don't believe in God, I just believe in a connection to nature, to each other, to the universe. This connection that we all have. Some the person in the poem says, "Yeah, God." So just as how the old barns look different from the different points of view of the people in the poem, so does God look different to the people in the poem. So we're not sure exactly how to describe God or what it is, but out here on the outskirts, it's appropriate to sort of ask these questions. And you know these the different like standing out there amongst the trees and the spider webs, and collecting rocks. How kids will often collect rocks as they're just walking along, and they have little different names for the rocks. But even looking up at the sky, the clouds look different. They look like, one looks like this animal shape, one looks like that. But really, this poem is about sort of a point of view, and whether it's clouds in the sky or sort of looking up to a higher principle or God Himself. People have sort of different intimations and different ideations of what God actually is, and um, it's kind of, if we can go to the sort of, and if we can bring Buddhism back into it, there's a Buddhist idea that sort of the difference between my beliefs and others' beliefs is really just our point of view. Like the true difference between us is where we are looking. But yeah, so that's sort of kind of a bit of an analysis on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of I enjoy how at the beginning, she sees those, sees the barns. One, Ada Limon, being from Northern California, went to school at NYU, now lives in Kentucky. So, here she is, writing about being in Kentucky, with the bluegrass, I'm assuming.
Hmm.
Um, but kind of being on the outskirts, almost like on the outskirts of society a little bit. Um, seeing these sort of a beautiful abandoned, even in use, maybe it is this kind of Southern art Gothic. Maybe it is like sort of these ideas, like how like, maybe like ideas like Christianity, like in a lot of Southern Gothic books, like it's kind of like it's sort of it's not what people actually do, but it's kind of like out there in the sort of either of like what people should do, but like everyone knows that they don't. Um,
Hmm.
like maybe some of these ideas are even uh, these things that are, abandoned, they look beautiful, even the ones in use. Um, even though you
Hmm.
can't quite tell if they're in use or not, just from the outside. And like how because there's a difference in how people sort of look at, history, like she says they look like the arcs after waters, like, Noah's Ark. She says they look like
Hmm.
pirate ships, like what do you call it? Do you call them spreading civilization, or do you say they're colonizing, like how do you what do you
Right.
how do you perceive it? Were they pirate ships? Were they going there and taking the resources from the people, or were they going there and spreading, the sort of the wealth of the knowledge of Jesus Christ? Who knows? But
Hmm.
it's kind of a it's kind of it's how you look at it. And then, then she remembers back on that time with Jay, where says like, you don't believe in God, and like as you were saying, like, no, it's like sort of a matter of perspective. No, I see this, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's God. That's what I meant when I said God,
Right.
and how we kind of, we have our own sort of definitions for things. Oftentimes we have our sort of own dictionary. People could say something to us that we never heard before, but we may not be able to recognize it because we just translate it back into things that we know already. um, and her staying there, like these low beasts, they're almost kind of they're almost kind of both right in this, in a sense, but she's saying, she refused to call it so. Instead they looked up at this unruly sky, which I kind of like it, which is like nature, like they see the sky unruly. It refuses
Mm.
to abide by their rules. And they see the clouds in simple animal shapes that they can name, but they know just how that they're just clouds, disorderly, marvelous, and ours. It's because like they don't have any control over them. Their only control is in what they call them, and in a sense, it's all an illusion. And like, all they can do is sort of name the illusion that's in front of them. And that maybe that's a comment on humanity. Adam's job was to name the animals. Maybe that's
Mm.
all we can do is just name things, and all this
Right.
stuff is going to be happening, and we don't actually have any control over it.
Right.
And we're all
Right.
going to call it something different. So
And it's just it's our point of view, and it's
yeah, yeah,
just sort of what it looks like to us.
yeah. So I kind of love how this is like told in like a story that you could easily just read this and you could take from this whatever you want to almost.
Right.
And I think that makes it good. I think that makes it good art, good, a good poem is that you could read this and you could go in a lot of different directions. Um, I don't know. And a part, I feel like that's like when something like kind of touches on almost like that sort of like that like maybe divine or reaches that sort of platonic ideal. This is just a shade, you know.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like we there were hints of Buddhism in the poem. Like we talked to sort of like the whole point of view being like some like a spiritual thing. You know, your point of view is
Hmm.
like a spiritual component to your sort of makeup,
Yeah.
and that's sort of like kind of like a Buddhist ideal. But also like you know like what like sort of what is called higher like are the barns in the distance, are they arcs, are they sort of saving us, like are they pirate ships? This sort of dichotomy is like like it sort of pushes concepts to sort of each end. It's sort of
Hmm.
the barn, like at the end the clouds are disorderly yet marvelous. Now the barns are sort of disorderly because we can't get a bead on it, you know um like just as maybe God himself has been portrayed as a bit disorderly because
Hmm.
there's nothing definitive. The bar, nothing is sort of, everything's sort of up in the air, you know. So it makes sense that these sort of conversations and these sort of things take place on the outskirts,
Yeah.
this is almost like it's almost like Satan tempted Jesus out in the wilderness, So
Hmm. Hmm.
I guess it's appropriate to be kind of dichotomous on the outskirts.
Hmm. It's also interesting, like with the barns, like like an ark is like something that kind of like saves you, rescues you, almost like a place of sanctuary, like we were talking about before. Or is it a pirate ship, like something that's sort of doesn't belong there, that is there to take and
Right.
you know um yeah, it's just like coming to take from the area. And I guess maybe a bit of both. um
Mm,
but yeah, I think it's another thing too, going to some of this, like with talking about Mary Oliver earlier, kind of the Buddhism leaning is we're using we're reaching this place with all these sort of mundane images, right?
mm, mm,
Like everything is sort of it's just very mundane, like even the story itself, there's nothing, there's almost like a lot of drama here with not a lot happening, you know
mm,
there's not and it's just like a few exchanges back and forth, and yet it almost is like we're talking about like life and death here, you know, between believing in God and not believing in God, order and chaos, just with like an exchange back and forth between two people, walking in a field,
right.
um, and eh, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's something there with just like focusing on that here and now, small things getting to big ideas.
Mm. Kind of like seeds,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, seeds is a common metaphor, and sort of like, I
that is
guess,
true. Like if you had faith, like a mustard seed.
right, yeah. Especially when you're talking about something growing exponentially.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I got from this. It's all of our point of view. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and that's kind of there's something beautiful in that.
Yeah,
Something
yeah, I enjoy the
transcendent.
subtlety.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, I mean, a lot of her poems. I mean, a lot of her poems are kind of like that. I mean, maybe it's a bit romantic, but nature can help us transcend the self.
Hmm. Hmm.
Buddhism, elements of Christianity, Buddhism,
Yeah.
art. These
Yep.
things can have been said and have been shown to aid, to show to be able to transcend the self.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hey,
And also with even kind of going back to earlier, with my poem, the transcending the self, being a witness, oftentimes, that's kind of the role of the poet, the role of the artist is to transcend themselves, to be a witness of the world, to kind of speak from this sort of higher omniscient sort of point of view. Um, and then of course you have those artists too who say like, oh, I'm gonna be like a confessionalist, or I'm gonna be very specifically like narrow-minded, narrow point of view, sort of intentionally. But um yeah, it's just I appreciate the sort of maybe all the effort that goes into being able to write a poem like that.
and I would say even the artists that sort of narrow their focus on one thing, that's sort of like they're almost trying to rescue, instead of trying to rescue their lowly selves, they're almost trying to rescue the lowly object, or
Mm,
they're almost trying to say exalt the maybe exalt the cup or something, exalt the
mhm, mhm.
exalt the shoe or something like that, as opposed to maybe exalting their personage. The real
Yeah,
crazy
yeah.
idea is this idea that humanity, we're sort of creating this heaven, this hyperspace that we are moving into. All of our
Mhm, mhm.
efforts throughout history of art and religion and
Right.
even science, we're creating a realm that we will one day push into, but we have
Yeah,
to sort of
right. Yeah,
shape that space first through
yeah, yeah.
constantly trying to transcend our mortal coil.
Mm, mm, mhm.
But
That's why you're a shining star, no matter who you are.
that's a bit more esoteric than we usually
Yeah.
get here on Verse Take.
Shining bright to see, shining bright, yeah, to see,
Shine bright like a
or
diamond.
yeah. I don't know. The Earth, Wind, and Fire. They believed in all that. You create a star that you inhabit when you die.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's
well, and then like I heard Little Richard talk about what you got to go into the Big Dipper and pour yourself back down on planet Earth or something like that.
mm, mm,
So
maybe. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
there's
I'll
also
let you guys know when I get back.
we
Yeah.
be astro traveling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So I mean,
Um.
it doesn't matter if you're
Little
Mad
little
Lib, if you're
Quasimodo
Earth,
there.
Wind, and Fire,
Hmm. Hmm.
Quasimodo.
Hmm. Yep.
Poetry and the poetic
Raw
verse,
Sun.
they have
Right.
those in they have those in common. That's
Right.
what we all
Right.
have in common.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, but hey, I mean, Ada Limon. This is our current U.S. Poet Laureate. This is her last year for it. Someone else is going to be taking that mantle here soon. We'll probably. I mean, hopefully, we'll do an episode on them then. Um,
Okay, yeah.
but that should be within, I think, the next year.
Really?
And
Do you know when it's always
I,
like? How do
I
you
don't
know?
know
How do
when
they?
they do 2-year terms,
Oh, okay.
and I know that she won't be doing another term.
Mm,
So recently, like she put out like her schedule for like the rest of the year,
okay. Okay.
I believe. I believe. I could be wrong, but
All right.
yeah.
All right. Well,
So,
hey. I mean,
but I mean, the cool thing is we've done some poets that are older, that have long been deceased. Ada Limon is someone that we've done, and we'll be able to see what she's up to in 10 years.
hopefully, yeah, that'll be cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll be here giving our take on her verses.
10 years from
Okay.
now. Put it down, folks.
I don't. I promise you. I promise you. I do not want to think about 2035. I'm telling you. That's the last thing I
Dude, you're
want to
already
think
there.
about.
You're already there.
In some ways I am, but I don't want to think
Yeah.
about it.
I haven't really thought too much about it being 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about how it's been 25, we've a quarter of the century done.
I didn't even think about that.
You know,
Yeah, we are
70,
25 years in.
70, the first quarter of the 21st century is in the books. So,
A lot of things unchanged. A lot of things have not.
yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Hey, but you know what? We're still gonna be rocking steady here at Burst Take. Uh, next episode we got coming. We got our lineup set, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's like Matt Rothke maybe something.
No, no,
Maybe.
that'd be uh
Oh
Theodore.
no, no, we have Henry Wadsworth Longfellow
Oh, okay,
is
okay.
next.
That's gonna be that'll be fun. So
Yeah,
we're good. We're taking it way back.
way back.
Well, talking about romantics.
Right. Yeah. Now we
Yeah.
got another one.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
hey,
well, hey, I'm James.
I'm I'm Justin.
And this has been Verse Take. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Get down in the comments and tell
Right,
us how you feel.
right. Please.
Signing off, and we'll see you guys in the funny papers.
Godspeed.
All right, that was that. Kind of a quicker episode, but
Yeah,
oh well.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think so too. That's probably about a good amount of time.
Keep getting